Welcome to another edition of Ace on Music. I'm your host, Ace, and I'm joined as always by my producer, Mark, and by my faithful music lover here, Sean. So, you know, been managing bands now for the better part of 2 decades, and what I noticed when we started getting some success is that you start getting inundated by other bands who want you to look at them to manage them in order to advance their career and all that sort of thing. And we get a lot of those. I mean, in fact, one of Sean's jobs for me when he's working for me is that I funnel most of those submissions to him. He reviews them, and if they are something that he feels is worthy of further looking, he forwards them back to me. And it's a Herculean job because you're basically having somebody present their hopes and dreams to you and hope that you see the vision that they have. But the reality is that from a manager's point of view and just being very upfront about it, it is as much work for me to manage an established artist that is making me decent money in the course of a year through touring or album releases, as it is to manage a band that's brand new and has just started off, but they're not making you any money. So it's not something that I tend to indulge in very often because it's almost like playing the lottery. I mean, if it doesn't pay off, then you put a whole lot of work in for basically no payoff. But sometimes the rare thing happens where that magic connection happens, where you're presented with something and it really connects with you on a deep level, and it's something that you're willing to gamble your time and effort on. And for me, that band was Tax the Heat. It is Tax the Heat. Um, the story basically goes is that back in 2010, when Adam and I took over managing Thin Lizzy at the time, we had a massive European tour booked, and we really needed to have an assistant for the band. Somebody who would do a lot of the running around, prepare their dressing rooms, take care of their wardrobe, all that kind of thing. And through a strange chain of events, we got connected with this young man whose name was Jack Taylor. And he was working in a music store that was going out of business, and he knew one of the roadies for Thin Lizzy, and he kind of said, if you ever have any work for me, I'd love to try and go into this industry. And Jack really did have it together, so we brought him on the road with us, and he was a superstar right out of the gate. The guy was just awesome. He's really, really bright. He was very, focused on his job, did a great job, and he was taken from a young lad who's growing up near Bristol in England and suddenly taken on this worldwide tour with Thin Lizzy and seeing places of the world he never thought he would see. And I remember at the end of the first year, or maybe the second year that we were doing the Thin Lizzy shows, we were playing at one of my favorite venues in London called Shepherd's Bush Empire. And Shepherd's Bush is an old style sort of vaudevillian theater that's been converted into a concert hall. It's very ornate. It has multi balconies and behind the scenes, the dressing rooms are on the second, third, and fourth floors of this building, and so on the second floor there's also the production offices, which is where I usually have set up my computer and everything for the day. And it was the end of the evening, and we were kind of going through the motions of packing everything up. And Jack came in to see me, and he was rather sheepish about it. And he said, "I want you to listen to something." And he handed me this home burnt CD, and it said "Tax the Heat" on it. And it was 4 tracks. And he said that he explained to me that he had run into an old high school friend of his on the break from the last tour that we had done, and that they had decided to get together and jam some music, and were pretty excited about what they were coming up with, and they wanted me to hear the demos. And I listened to the songs, and it was a good first start. You want to encourage people that you like and you care about. So it's like, there's something here. I think you got a ways to go yet, but keep us apprised of what's going on, because if this does go in a direction that I think is decent, then maybe we can do something with it. So off he went. And we did another year of touring, and again, we ended up being at Shepherd's Bush Empire at the end of the tour. Usually we ended it in London, for obvious reasons. And Jack came in and he said, okay, we have found two other guys to be in the band, and we've written some material and we've demoed it. And I remember him playing me this stuff, and this is just over a computer with its crappy little speakers and stuff like that. And with each moment, I was getting more and more excited, and I was trying not to show it. I was trying to stay calm, and I was like, this is really good. This is really good. And at the end of it, I remember Jack saying, well, what do you think? And I said, Jack, wait right here. And I went next door to where Adam, my business partner, had his office. And I said, you got to hear this. And I brought him over and I played him the tracks. And he said, who is this? I went, this is Jack's band. And we were like, well, we got to do something. So we talked to them and we told them we would love to take a chance on managing them. And so they went away and they started writing enough material for an album. And we decided to call in some favors to try and make things happen for these guys. They came to us and said their dream producer would be a guy named Chris Goss, who, if you don't know who Chris Goss is, most famous for doing bands like Queens of the Stone Age, or he's got a bunch of bands under his belt. His own band, Masters of Reality, is also quite well known. Anyway, Chris turns out he's actually a friend of mine and of Adam's, and so I reached out to him and I said, look, we have this band, and Chris is a very artsy kind of guy. He's a very odd kind of guy in a lot of ways, but I love him to death. He told me, we were in Sweden together at Sweden Rock, and we had breakfast the following morning. And he said, Ace, I get offered 100 projects a year. I do one. And this year it's going to be Tax the Heat. I'm blown away by this. And we were like, wow, okay. So we got this big name producer who's going to be involved in this. And because of the financial constraints and stuff, we didn't have a label yet or anything. So we decided that we were just going to do a 4-track EP so that they could record with Chris, get some label interest. And so they recorded this EP, and we started selling it at shows and things like that, or through their website to their friends and family and things like that. But we had a strong relationship with one of the biggest rock stations in England called Planet Rock, and one of their DJs on there, Paul Anthony, has been a longtime friend of both Adam and I, many years. And he has enough control and power at that station that he can get stuff played that he likes just because he likes. It's not like he's forced to play certain songs for them a lot. And we went to him, we said, listen, we want you to look at this band, Tax the Heat, and listen to the stuff. If you think it's good, would you maybe give them a few spins late night on your show or something like that, just so we can show them that, they're getting some exposure. And he said, well, if I like it, sure. And he came back and he said, well, I like what I see and I like what I hear. So he said, I'm gonna have it played. I think it debuted at 2:30 in the morning on the station.
Wow!
But immediately they started getting phone calls and saying, "What was that? Can you play that again?" And in very short order, it got added to the A-list rotation on the station. The track was Feed the Lines, Fed to the Lines, excuse me. So. Suddenly they had this impact, and they suddenly started getting a few offers for national acts that were coming through the area saying, how'd you like to open for this band or open for that band? And so they started getting in front of people, and here was a group of 4 young men, all really good looking guys, all very talented musicians. Alex, the front man, had a real charisma. Jack, they had this style where instead of doing the traditional band setup where you have the drums in the back and the guitar players and the vocalists, they all performed in a line. So Jack was on the same level as the other guys. And we started putting them on shows with some of our acts. They were opening for bands like Thin Lizzy and whoever else we were dealing with at the time. And then it came to the point where it was time to try and get a label behind this. And you know, Tax the Heat, as far as the kind of bands that we represent, they were kind of an anomaly. I mean, we mostly deal with classic rock. This was something, it was definitely rooted in hard rock, but it was almost a sound of their own. But we had strong relationships with a lot of labels, and we went to one of them, Nuclear Blast, and we said, look, check this band out. We really believe there's going to be something here. And the label said, yeah, we think there's something here too. And so they gave us a deal, and they put out the first two records. Actually, they did two records under Nuclear Blast, which is all their records so far, not counting the EP they did at the beginning. And we went out, but the problem that we ran into through this process, the first album was quite successful. It did decent. We started getting some notoriety, a lot of great press. We had some very fortunate things happen to us along the way. They got Download Festival. They played opening on the main stage on Download, which is, if you don't know what Download is, it's one of the biggest hard rock metal festivals in England every year. 110,000 people attend it. And then they also did a festival more in the middle of England, and they had something amazing happen to them. If you want to talk about fate stepping in, they were playing. I think Aerosmith was headlining that night, and Aerosmith hadn't done a lot of shows in England at that point. They don't often come over, so it was a big deal, and there was a lot of people who wanted to go see the Aerosmith thing. And Tax the Heat was playing in a tent stage, which, if you've never been to one of these festivals, they set up these big party tents that can hold maybe 500 odd people or something like that, and that's sort of a little sub stage where they have the more junior bands play. And they were going to play their set in here. It was like 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon or something. And as it turned out, about 5 minutes before the band was to go on stage, the heavens opened up and just there's the rain started to pour. So everybody wanted to get out of the rain. And where's the best place to get out of the rain?
In the tent.
In the tent. So suddenly they went from having 50 people standing out there to it being rammed to you couldn't move.
Nice.
And it really worked out because several journalists were among them, and they all wrote about this standout band that nobody had really expected to see. And then, so I mean, it really things started happening for them. And these guys are really creative guys. They really were adamant about keeping control over every aspect of the thing. And one of the areas that they really excelled in was videos. They would do their own videos. They had some friends in the area who were aspiring filmmakers, and in my opinion, they made some of the great music videos of all time. I mean, if you go check out Learn to Drown, the concept was that the entire video is done in one shot, one take, one camera, the whole thing, and they do the whole song from beginning to end. And I mean, it doesn't sound that complex, but if you go watch it, you'll see what I'm talking about, because basically the camera was positioned in the center of a room and it's rotating constantly. And so what's happening is as soon as the camera passes this part of the set, there's people who run in, change the set, so that by the time the camera comes around again, you're seeing something new. And they released a second video in conjunction with it where it showed how it was all done from a camera that was mounted in the corner of the room, and that's just as fascinating to watch. Or they came out with this really cool one for their single Animals that is still one of my favorite videos. I'll try and remember to put the links into the notes section here so you can check them out. But there was a lot of, I mean, they were getting great press, a lot of feedback, a lot of great things going on. And then they started working on their second record, and it came out, Change Your Position. Now this one was a slight, we talked in last week's main episode about bands that sometimes experiment with different things, and Tax the Heat was still finding their way, but they made this record, which in my opinion is even better than the first one. But it's not really a classic rock style record. It's not. It's a Tax the Heat record. And it was become very difficult to find a place for them to play, because the classic rock bands were kind of going, it's not really what we're looking for. But the more newish bands are going, oh, they're a little too much classic rock. So they were having trouble finding their way. But every time they did get in front of people, they always blew people away. And they had some really neat things happen, like for example, who's the guy who from Mott the Hoople? What's the main guy's name?
Oh, the singer?
Yeah,
Um,
Ian
Ian Hunter.
Ian Hunter. Thank you. So Ian Hunter was doing some touring in England. He was going to do, I think, 16 shows or something like that, and it was split between four promoters. And for the opening act, he went to the promoters and said, "I want something fresh and new. Bring me, show me some examples of what you think should be opening for me." And one of the promoters that was involved was one that was a big proponent of Tax the Heat, and so he put Tax the Heat forward. And Ian Hunter was so impressed with Tax the Heat from what he heard that they actually did the entire run with him, and it was quite successful. But now they're in a position where we're trying to decide where to go forward. And right now, in this world of the internet and all that, is a label really necessary, or is it? Because there's a lot of catches that come along with using a label. I mean, you certainly get the advantages of the distribution and all that sort of thing, but you also have to pay the piper, as it were.
Right.
So, we're making those decisions now. But I'll tell you, we talk a lot about live shows and everything. When Change Your Position came out, they did a show in a little bar in London, where it was basically a record release party, and they played the album in its entirety. I think that may be the only time they've ever done that, and I was in awe the whole time. I stood there and I saw what I think is one of the greatest live shows I've ever seen when that performance happened that night. So, as you can see, I mean, Tax the Heat is a band I really believe in. I really think that they're going to make it. They're one of those bands that they're defining a new vein of music on their own, and they're going to be recognized for that at some point. But there is the whole point of my story here is that if you have a band and you're trying to make it, remember the key elements that are at play here. The things that made Tax the Heat successful is they're extremely focused. There's no infighting in that band. They're all very supportive of each other, and it's all about, everything is about what is best for the band. Their own egos get checked. It's always what's best for the music, what's best for the band, how do we make this go forward. And they constantly are working on it. They're constantly writing music. They're constantly thinking about the visuals, and even down to, they were so adamant when the second record came out that they wanted it on vinyl that they went and had the vinyl pressings done themselves and things like that, because this was how they wanted their band presented. So what I'm saying to all of you out there who are new bands who are trying to make it, it's all about tenacity. It's all about hard work, and don't let your egos get in the way. It's about the music. It's about where this is going, where it's going to go, and it can happen. It can happen, and check out Tax the Heat because they'll blow you away.
Yeah, definitely.
You've seen them a few times with
Oh,
me.
yeah. And, it's a funny story because the first time I've seen them, I was actually, they just came out with a channel that had videos at late at night, which I missed. And one of the videos that came on there was the Learn to Drown video.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was such a brilliant idea. And then I saw the making of it, which was, to me, was even more fascinating than the video itself.
Truly.
I mean, it was just two different things, but I mean, yeah, it was exciting to see him do all that. And it was like, I didn't know that was a band that you managed. It was like a band that I would like listen to and like. And I grew up with a lot of bands that were just starting out. I've seen Tool start out in clubs, and when a band has it and they're together with each other. This band definitely has that vibe. I think they need to get out here in the U.S. and play some shows.
That would be nice. You mentioned the Learn to Drown video.
Yeah.
There's one thing about that video that
got to see this video.
That really drove home about how visionary these guys were. I remember when I first saw the video, and I watched it about 3 times in a row and was just blown away. And I phoned up Jack and Alex to tell them how impressed I was with it. And I said, it's really too bad that you didn't like, maybe record it in a way you could show people how this was done. He said, "Oh no, we did that." And I went, "What?"
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, we put a camera up in the corner, and we can do a video like that." So, you know, always be thinking about the angles and the things that are going to be interesting to people about your music and how you're going to present it. Tax the Heat has always been very adamant about how they present themselves, and even down to they occasionally do covers. I mean, they do incredible covers of songs that really show their roots. I mean, they're very rooted in the
Mm-hmm.
70s and in the psychedelic kind of stuff and everything. But
I can't wait to hear what they got to offer us soon.
me too. They won't let me hear the demos yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
anyway, so that was a little tale about Tax the Heat, and I wanted to share it with you. I hope that you if you have a band out there, you take some inspiration from it. Know that it can be done. So in the meantime, I want to thank Sean for joining me on this one, and Mark, of course, always for running the board, and thank all of you for your continued support. And you can always send us feedback at acetalksmusic@gmail.com, or you can leave comments right down in the comment section of whatever platform you're watching this in. And we're going to head over now to the Patreon platform and do our after hours show. So why don't you come join us there and check it out, and you can hear about what we talk about afterwards. So in the meantime, I know shows are starting to open up, and you're going to be going to see some live stuff soon. We're all excited about that. Remember, safety is paramount, and make sure that you take all the precautions that you need to and stay safe. So until next time.